The smell of smoked brisket still hung in the air when it happened, thick and sweet and comforting, the kind of scent that pulled families together. My barbecue restaurant wasn't just a business, it was a second home, built from my father's recipes and my mother's stubborn hands. On that hot Saturday afternoon, the patio was full, laughter spilling out onto the street, kids licking sauce off their fingers while live music hummed under the string lights. It was the American dream in motion, and for a moment, it felt untouchable. But then came the shriek that shattered it all. Karen, the bloated queen of our HOA, waddled across the street with a clipboard in one hand and a megaphone in the other, her face red with self-righteous fury. "This establishment is in violation of HOA codes," she screamed, her voice cracking over the music. "By order of the Homeowners Association, this so-called restaurant is shut down effective immediately." The music stopped mid-chord. The laughter died. Every eye turned to her as she planted herself on the patio, blocking customers from their food, waving her clipboard like it was the Constitution. My blood turned to fire. We weren't even under HOA jurisdiction. The restaurant sat on land zoned commercial, clear of their reach, but Karen's arrogance knew no limits. She strutted between tables, snatching plates, tipping over drinks, declaring everything evidence. My wife gasped as a tray of ribs hit the ground, sauce splattering across the patio, bricks like blood. The crowd erupted, half in outrage, half in disbelief. My fists clenched so tight I thought my bones would snap. I stormed forward, my voice cutting sharp. "Get out of my restaurant, Karen." But she smirked, planting her hands on her hips, her megaphone dangling at her side. "Oh, I'm not going anywhere. I have full authority. This barbecue joint is a health hazard and a fire risk, and if you resist, I'll fine you into bankruptcy." The word bankruptcy hit like a slap. Customers gasped. My wife's eyes widened, tears burning. This wasn't just about food anymore, this was our livelihood, our survival. Karen wasn't trying to shut down a party. She was trying to kill everything we had built. But what Karen didn't know, what nobody expected, was that I had been preparing for this day. Weeks earlier, whispers had reached me of HOA scheming Karen complaining at meetings that smoke and grease from my place lowered property values, that real families don't want barbecue stink in their neighborhood. So I had done my homework. Permits, fire codes, zoning laws, health inspections, I had every document in a neat binder, signed and sealed. And, more importantly, I had something else, a silent camera system that had been recording every step Karen took that afternoon, every plate she tossed, every false decree she barked. When the police arrived, called by frightened customers, Karen puffed up like a queen expecting reinforcements. "Arrest him," she bellowed, pointing at me. "He's in violation of HOA authority." But the officer, a calm man with weary eyes, raised a brow. "Ma'am, this property isn't part of your HOA, you're trespassing." The words sliced her like a blade. She stuttered, turned red, tried to wave her clipboard, but the officer wasn't finished. "And from the looks of it, you've just destroyed private property. Sir, do you have proof?" That was my cue. I pulled out the binder, handed over permits and inspection reports, then gestured to the cameras. Within minutes, the footage was playing back on the officer's tablet, Karen tossing food, knocking over drinks, screaming threats. The crowd roared, half in laughter, half in outrage. Karen's face twisted, her mouth working soundlessly as the officer read her rights. But here came the twist that lifted the whole scene into something unforgettable. From the back of the crowd, a familiar voice called out. It was Mr. Harlan, a retired judge who lived 2 blocks away, a man Karen had fined 3 times for his ugly bird bath. He stepped forward, cane tapping, voice steady as stone. "Officer, I'll testify to what we all witnessed here. And I'll personally assist this young man with any legal action against this so-called association." Karen froze, her power crumbling as her oldest victim turned against her. The officer smirked as deputies cuffed her, leading her to the cruiser while she shrieked about constitutional HOA authority. But the real satisfaction came weeks later when I filed the lawsuit. With Judge Harlan's help, I didn't just sue Karen, I sued the entire HOA board for damages, harassment, and interference with commerce. Courtroom after courtroom, the evidence piled up. Karen's tantrum on video, neighbors testifying to years of abuse, Financial audits revealing thousands of dollars of HOA funds misused on her personal shopping sprees. The board crumbled. The HOA was dissolved by court order, its funds seized to pay restitution. And Karen herself, stripped of title and reputation, faced charges of fraud and vandalism. The day the ruling came in my favor, I stood in the same courtroom where she once sneered, and I felt the weight lift off my chest. My wife wept beside me, customers sent flowers, and neighbors who had been silent too long came by with handshakes and hugs. The barbecue restaurant not only survived, it thrived. Word spread, and people drove from towns over just to taste the food that beat the HOA. Our patio filled night after night. Music playing, smoke curling into the sky, and laughter louder than Karen's shrieks ever were. Karen thought she could kill my barbecue dream with lies and arrogance. Instead, she handed me the biggest victory of my life. The courthouse smelled faintly of old wood and tension the morning of the trial. The HOA board shuffled in like a defeated army, their once proud blazers sagging on their shoulders. At the center of it all was Karen, her face pale beneath heavy makeup, eyes darting around the room as if searching for someone to rescue her. But there was no one left. Even her allies had abandoned her when the subpoenas arrived. She sat down heavily, the queen without a throne, the tyrant without a kingdom. When my attorney presented the opening argument, the room felt electrified. Every detail of that chaotic night at my restaurant was laid out like a carefully set table. The permits, the zoning codes, the inspection reports, all proving beyond doubt that my barbecue joint was fully legal. Then came the footage. Karen's image filled the courtroom screen, her voice shrill as she shouted through her megaphone, her hands grabbing plates of ribs, her body knocking over drinks as terrified families pulled back. Laughter broke out in the gallery, though the judge quickly hushed it. Still, the damage to Karen's defense was irreparable. But the real knockout came from the financial records. My lawyer introduced an expert witness, a forensic accountant, who revealed years of HOA funds siphoned into Karen's personal bank accounts. The receipts were almost cartoonish. $1,000 designer handbags, spa weekends, even a cruise to the Bahamas, all labeled as neighborhood improvements. The gallery gasped, and the judge's jaw tightened. When asked to respond, Karen sputtered, "Those were morale expenses." The courtroom erupted with laughter before the gavel slammed. Midway through the proceedings, the twist hit. One of Karen's own board members, a man named Dennis who had kept his head down for years, finally cracked. He stood up, requested permission to testify, and confessed that Karen had bullied the board into silence, threatening fines, and even fabricating violations against them if they dared oppose her. She said the HOA was her kingdom, he admitted, voice trembling, and we were her subjects. That line made the evening news, repeated like a mantra of her downfall. By the time the verdict was handed down, Karen was a ghost of herself. The judge ruled in my favor on every count: damages for vandalism, lost income, emotional distress, plus the dissolution of the HOA and seizure of its remaining funds to pay restitution. Karen personally was ordered to pay out of pocket, and with her accounts frozen under fraud investigation, bankruptcy loomed like a storm. The gavel cracked like thunder, and it was over. The sheriff's deputies moved toward her as the gallery erupted in applause. Karen screamed, kicking against the floor, her voice echoing in the rafters. "This is a conspiracy. You'll regret this." But her words fell on deaf ears. The deputies cuffed her and hauled her out, her shrieks fading into silence as the courtroom cheered louder. The once mighty president of the HOA left not as a leader, but as a criminal. In the weeks that followed, the neighborhood transformed. Without the HOA's stranglehold, people blossomed. Gardens bloomed with colors Karen would have fined into extinction. Kids rode bikes freely without fear of citations. Neighbors who had barely spoken before now gathered at each other's porches, united by the shared relief of freedom. And at the center of it all was my barbecue restaurant, no longer a target but a beacon. Families came from surrounding towns, drawn by the story as much as the smoked brisket. Local newspapers called it the barbecue that beat the HOA. Business doubled, then tripled. We had to hire extra staff just to keep up. One night, under string lights on the patio, I looked out at the crowd, families laughing, kids dancing to the band, the air thick with hickory smoke and joy. My wife stood beside me, her hand in mine, eyes shining with tears. "We almost lost this," she whispered. "But we didn't." I kissed her forehead and smiled. "No, we crushed them." The most powerful moment came at the dedication ceremony. Neighbors had pooled funds to commission a small wooden plaque, mounted right on the patio wall. It read, "To the man who stood tall, and to the family who fed us through the storm. Justice is served barbecue style." The inscription made me laugh and cry all at once. And as for Karen, her story ended where it belonged. Stripped of her titles, drowning in debt, she sat in a county jail cell awaiting sentencing for fraud and vandalism. Rumors trickled back that she still tried to boss around fellow inmates, demanding extra food, screaming about authority. But no one listened. The empire she built on fear had crumbled, and all she had left was the echo of her own arrogance. When I think back to that night, the shriek of her megaphone, the splatter of ribs on the patio bricks, my wife's tears, I realize it wasn't just about defending a restaurant. It was about defending dignity, defending the right to live free from tyranny disguised as authority. Karen thought she could kill my barbecue dream with fines and fury. Instead, she lit the fire that cooked her downfall. So now I ask you, was Karen's fate true justice? Or do people who abuse power like hers deserve even harsher consequences for the lives they try to destroy?